Another big thing with having a physical product move from point A to point B is it needs to be carried from point A to point B unless the product walks. And in that case, you have to have somebody lead the product. And we have 5 basic modes of transportation, and each of them has advantages and disadvantages. Kind of when we're talking about transportation, there's a trade-off between speed and cost. So the most expensive form of transportation is air transportation. It's also the most expensive. And in the United States, you can have, if you ship by air, you can have a product anywhere in the United States where there's an airport in a day. I can't think of very many places where there isn't an airport in the United States. And so you would want to use this because it's very expensive with products that are either have very high value, so inventory costs would justify minimizing time in transit, or if it's perishable. So for example, flowers are frequently shipped by air because fresh flowers have a very short shelf life. Diamonds can be shipped by air because diamonds are very expensive and don't take up very much space. Next on the list is trucking. It's not as fast as air. The nice thing about truck is it's you can deliver literally anywhere in the United States with a truck. I can't think of a place where a truck can't make it, because if your car can make it, a truck can make it if they drive carefully. Shipping times, if you want to go coast to coast, it takes about a week by truck. And it's very, very flexible because rather than delivering to an airport or delivering to a port or station with a truck, I can actually deliver door to door. And I can ship LTL or less than truckload, so I can even manage small shipments door to door. So I've got very convenient in terms of location. It's less expensive than air, but it's more expensive than other forms of transportation. Next on the list is rail. And rail is very cost effective. When Warren Buffett bought Burlington Northern, one of the things that came out in the discussion was that in terms of fuel efficiency, you can't beat a train in terms of ton miles per gallon. So it's a very inexpensive way to ship things. The disadvantage is you have to have a track and you have to have a station to load or unload. So it's really good for hauling low-value commodities for very long distances. I used to work at a grain elevator, and one of their competitive advantages is the grain elevator had the ability to load what they called unit trains, which means they had the ability to handle 100 cars at a time, or a whole train. And because they could load 100 cars at a time, that really cut down on their rail costs because they essentially filled a train rather than filling a couple of cars and then waiting for other producers to fill the rest of the train. And then the next one that you normally think of as a way of transportation is water. It's the slowest, it's the cheapest, and it requires water. So there has to be water and there has to be a place to land stuff, a port. So it's limited as to where you can ship to, but it's very inexpensive. So there was recently the Maersk company filed for bankruptcy, which is one of the major shipping companies, which threw basically the whole commercial world in turmoil because so much of the merchandise that we buy in Christmas is shipped by ship in the fall and in the summer, and with all of these containers of product locked up in ports while we're clearing bankruptcy, it's really disrupted supply chains. So again, it's slowest mode, it requires access to port, and it works best for low value bulk shipments. I used to work at a barge hatch factory recovery, worst job ever. If you ever think about dropping out of college, let me tell you about working at the fiberglass factory. It'll get you back, scholarship or no. But on the Mississippi River, they ship a lot of coal, a lot of iron ore, again, grain, a lot of bulk commodities. It doesn't matter how fast it gets there, it matters how inexpensively it gets there. And the last and least expensive way of transporting something is pipeline, which you might not think of a mode of transportation. But if you have a pipeline, it's great. The problem is you have to have a pipeline. So it needs to be a product that can be transmitted as a fluid or a fluid-like state, so it works well for things like oil, natural gas, water. And it's a very expensive fixed cost because you have to build the pipeline, but once you have that pipeline built, it's very inexpensive to push product through the pipeline. The last thing I want to talk about with transportation is the idea of intermodal transportation. And this is like one of the greatest inventions of the 20th century, in my opinion, is the shipping container. And you've seen these shipping containers. If you ever drive over the Bay Bridge, you see that whole stack of unused shipping containers waiting by the Port of Oakland. It's an interesting way of judging the balance of trade as to how many empty shipping containers are stacking up here. But if you think about it, before the days of the shipping container, you've heard the saying, it fell off the truck. So when I transported large quantities of things, I'd have to put them on a truck. I'd have to load the truck by hand, 2 for you, 2 for you, 1 for me. And then when I got to the port, I'd have to take it off the truck and put it on the boat, 2 for you. Oops, dropped 1, 2 for you, 1 for me. And there's all kinds of fun things that could happen. With a standard shipping container, a lot of good things happen. One is you put everything in the container, you shut the door, you lock the door, and there's no chance of anything falling off the truck as it goes from the truck to the ship or from the factory to the truck. Also, because shipping containers are standard sized, it allows you to develop packaging that matches the container exactly. Has anybody ever like moved or helped somebody move? And what's, you pack the thing, and when you're packing, what are you trying to do? You're trying to maximize space, and have you ever moved over a bumpy road? You want to keep things from rattling around, right, and getting broken or shaken. So the idea is if you have a standardized space that you're going to ship in, you can develop your packaging that makes the most efficient use of the space, and it minimizes that jostling around because you can fill the container exactly. And then once you have the container, we get into this intermodal transportation where the container is designed, there's different sizes, but the most common size is about the size of a truck trailer. And you see those on the freeway all the time. That's called shipping, I guess. There's no fancy name for that. You take that shipping container when you get to the port and you put it on a boat, just lift the entire container on, and you see the boats leaving with piles and piles of containers on them. That's called fishy back. Or you could put them on a train, and you've seen trains go by with 2 or 3 of those containers per car. That's called piggyback. And then finally you can, for some commodities, ship them by air. It's called birdieback. Just in marketing, you have to have cute names for things, otherwise people won't take you seriously.